I used to tell myself that I was going to work until I die. And I believed that for so long. Not because I want to work, but because I thought that I have to work because there's just no way for me to prepare for retirement. Until I crunched the numbers and realized that there's actually a way for me, even at the income level that I was at, to prepare for financial independence and live a life of freedom. And there's a very high chance as well that you can do the same. Because if we took the time and we crunched the numbers, there's actually a path for Filipinos to retire comfortably even before they hit the age of 60 years old. So in this video, we're going to do the math and you're going to see how possible it is for you to experience financial independence. So at the end of this video, we answer one question. Can a Filipino retire before 60 years old? And if the answer is yes, how can we make that happen? So before anything else, a quick disclaimer. I'm not a licensed financial planner. I'm just a dude showing his numbers in hope of educating Filipinos and inspiring them to start their own financial independence journey. There's a mindset amongst a lot of Filipinos, and we inherit this very early on, that we cannot reach retirement. And I want to go against that mentality by sharing the psychology and the math that completely contradicts this mindset. So a little bit about me before we dive in a bit further. My name is Patrick Mabilog. My friends call me Kiko. I'm an entrepreneur, investor, Lord of the Rings fan. I got into debt twice, but eventually built a business from scratch and created an investment portfolio that has now reached 8 figures. So all of this really started when I was looking back at the podcast that I was running a couple of years back, and I still am. In 2021, when Manny Pacquiao lost a fight to this guy, I forgot how to pronounce his name. I released a podcast episode, and during that time, many people were saying that Manny Pacquiao should probably retire because he was losing, fight after fight. And my argument during that time was because Manny Pacquiao loved what he did, that he didn't have to retire. And I made this case essentially saying that it's the same with me because I love marketing, I love business, that I'm not going to retire and I don't want to retire. And while the base mental model might have been kind of true, I realized that there was a big flaw in my subconscious thinking. I was convinced that I didn't have to retire. But the truth of the matter was, I believed deep down inside that I couldn't because I was earning pretty well, but I thought that I didn't have enough money to build passive income in my old age. So I resigned to the idea that I would probably have to work my entire life. And all of that changed one time when this happened. So this is a picture of my family. Those are our two kids. And so one time we were driving to the mall and we were going to spend like the typical Saturday in the mall, right? And as I was driving to the mall, my eldest daughter, Alexa, asked the question. She asked, Dad, can I buy some art supplies? And I told her, sure, no problem. You can get whatever you want. But she was a bit hesitant because she told me that the brand that she wanted was expensive. And she said, it might ruin your budget. And as parents, Cess and I decided very early on that we were going to do whatever it takes for our children to pursue their dreams, even if it meant we had to fund it, right? But then the thought hit me. Maybe at this point, this is just art materials. At this age, doesn't seem like a big sacrifice. But what if one day, 20, 30, 40 years from now, in my old age, I become the hurdle for my daughters when they're trying to pursue their dreams because they have to take care of us financially? I could very well be the reason that my daughters will miss the window. And so because of that, I got obsessed with crunching the numbers and learning as much as I could when it comes to building a comfortable retirement. The reason why I'm really diving deep into this is because I want you to understand why this matters before we even look at the numbers. Because a lot of you probably are watching this video and saying, well, you know what? If you can't retire, no harm in that. It's still a long way. This is actually more weighty than we think because it's not just about money. It's not just about numbers. It's not just about investments. It's not just about returns on your bonds, your stocks, whatever it is. But it's actually about the life that your family gets to live. And more importantly, if you have kids, the life that they will get to live when you're a little bit more advanced in age. And so I dove down deep into principles of investing, and I learned this principle called the gap principle. This was the beginning point for me. And this is what I want to teach you because this is where it begins. If you want to retire at 60, 65 years old, then we have to start with this concept. The gap principle teaches us that it's not about how much you earn, it's the space between what you make and what you spend. It's the amount that you have, because you can have 100,000 pesos in income, but if you only save 5,000 pesos, you're probably gonna have a harder time reaching financial independence than someone who's earning 50,000 but they can save and invest 10,000. And what you want to know here is you want to build the numbers to have three clear goals. Number one is your freedom goal. Number two is your investment goal. And number three is your income goal. And I'm going to break down these goals one by one so that we can really see what it looks like to start preparing for a retirement that will be comfortable by the age of 60 or even earlier is more than enough. Because I see all the time people who are earning 500,000, 1 million, 2 million pesos per month. But then you ask them, how much have you invested? And their answer is, nothing yet. At least I've invested in my business. I've invested in myself, through courses and all of that. Those are important things. Again, don't get me wrong. But those are all sources of active income. If you want to retire and if you want to have financial independence, the goal is to build passive income. So how do you do that? These are the three goals that we need to start with. So let's go through them one by one. The first one is your freedom goal, your freedom number. What your freedom number is this: it's simply the amount that you need invested to live comfortably in your old age. So in essence, what that means is you have an idea of how much you're going to spend when you're 60, 65 years old. So this is where a lot of people actually kind of miss out on, because they don't even know what their lifestyle is going to look like in their later years. And so the challenge that I see a lot of people have is they don't know what if they're reaching that goal, or they don't even know the goal because they have no idea what kind of goal they're shooting for. Here's one example, right? And this is just my personal example. Imagine that this is me in my retirement years. Yes, I'm still gonna be fit by that time. My goal, separate goal, of course, is to be, to look like this. Still have a full set of hair, hopefully. But let's just imagine, right, that this is the kind of income or the kind of expenses, the budget that I'm going to have with my wife by the time that we retire. So more or less, we're looking at about 55,000 pesos per month. And make sure that you factor in inflation, by the way. I've got a video sharing how you can do that elsewhere. So it's going to be linked here somewhere. So let's say, for example, that after you compute all of your expenses, you land at a rough estimate of this basic budget, right? Again, basic, not lavish. That can come later on. But if you were to compute what your expenses would look like in the province in the Philippines, like that's our plan, then you probably need about 55,000 pesos a month to live very lean, which would look and feel like around 26 to 30,000 in today's spending if you account for inflation. So it's doable. It's not luxurious, but if you take this to account, then you could probably meet your daily needs by the time that you retire. And so once again, you land at 55,000 pesos a month. So once you know that number, you now know for a fact that this is the goal. This is the freedom goal. This is the amount that I need to hit if I want to live comfortably in my retirement years. And so once again, and I've shared this a couple of times in my videos, if you shoot for about 14,000 pesos per month in SSS pension, what that means is if you want to live a lifestyle that's around 55,000 pesos a month, then you're short 41,000 pesos per month. And if you multiply that for a year, your annual spending will probably be close to 500,000 pesos. So about 492,000 per year to be exact. And so the question now that you need to answer is, how are you going to hit that goal? And that's where this very important principle that I've taught a couple of times, but I really want to pound this again and again, comes into play. It's called the 4% rule. So this rule is a retirement planning guideline stating that if you have a certain investment amount, that you can safely withdraw around 4% of your investment portfolio every year, and it will last you a very long time. 30 years probably, or possibly even to the point that you never run out of money. And so some people will say that it's better to go for 3.5%. The person who actually created the 4% rule recently just came out with another update where he said it can actually be around 4.7% now. But for the sake of simplicity, let's just have 4% as the baseline. So let me explain and illustrate what this looks like for you. Let's say, for example, you have your investment portfolio. If your investment portfolio will grow by about 7 to 8% per annum, and then inflation will eat about 3 to 4% of that growth, you'll be left with about 4%. And so, for example, if you have a 10 million peso portfolio invested into different funds, diversified in bonds, stocks, so on and so forth, and you follow the 4% rule, you can withdraw about 400,000 pesos per year without touching your 10 million. And so that's how the concept works. So the fund grows, you take out the growth, and then you leave the fund again so that that fund will continue to provide you with more income in the future once you start withdrawing the second year, the third year, the fourth year. So that's how the 4% rule works. And so if you follow the 4% rule or the 25x rule, which is the same thing actually, because 100 divided by 4%, 25x, then that means that going back to the example uh, freedom goal that I showed earlier, which was 492,000 per year. If you apply the 25x rule there, or the 4% rule, then you need about 12,300,000 pesos invested by the time that you retire. So that's your freedom goal. That's your freedom number. You need 12,300,000 pesos. 12 million ish, right? Invested so that you can cover your 55,000 pesos per month lifestyle with SSS and your own private investments as well. So the second number that you want to look at after this is you want to look at your investment goal. And once again, once you're trying to figure out what your investment goal is, you want to reverse engineer it based on that goal. So start with the end in mind and then build backwards. So what does that look like? So let's say, for example, that your goal, right, was 12,300,000 pesos. Then taking this calculator, which is, available for free online. There are so many calculators like this. If your income target is 12,300,000 and then you start with zero and you have 30 years to build that up, right? 30 years. So if you have 30 years, let's say, for example, you start at the age of 30 and you want to be able to retire at 60 years old. So that gives you 30 years to invest. If you want to do that and you have a return rate of about 8% every year and you compound it annually, you will need to contribute roughly around 8,732 pesos and 38 cents in order to hit that 12 million goal. So if you religiously put in 8,000 every month for 30 years, then you'll start with zero, but then you'll continue to contribute and you'll end up contributing around 3 million pesos worth in that time for the 30 years. But because of the interest, the compound interest growth over the time that you stay invested, that fund will grow by about another 9 million pesos. And so that's the power of compound interest. Once again, if you continue to invest, if you dollar cost average or peso cost average for a long time, meaning that you put in a fixed amount consistently every month, in this case being 8,732 pesos, then this could grow to 12,300,000 in 30 years time. And so that's how you know how much you need to invest. If you go backwards, right, you reverse engineer. So know how long you have, what's your investment horizon. In this case, is 30 years, what your return rate will be. And from there, you'll know how much you need to invest per month to hit your freedom number. And the last number that you need to know is to have your income goal. So if you take a step back, right, and you see that you need about 8,700 pesos. In this case, let's simplify it and let's round it up to about 9,000 pesos per month. That's your target investment. If you want to be able to hit 12,300,000 pesos in investment so that you can make 55,000 pesos per month. So how do you reach that amount? So in practice, a lot of people will say that you want to be able to invest about 10% of your income every month. There's the fire movement that says that you want to shoot for a bit more, right? You want to shoot for 30, 40, 50%. But those are cases where you want to retire way, way, way early, which can work for some, but might not work for others. That probably deserves a completely different video for itself. But let's just say conservatively, sustainably, you can probably invest about 10% every month of your income. And so that gives you about 90% to take care of everything else, your needs, your wants, your other goals in life, buying a house, continuing your SSS pension, getting married, having kids. So if you target about, 10% investment, what that means is that your income should be around 90,000 pesos per month or more. So let me make this very clear, okay? I'm not blind to the data. I know for a fact that 90,000 pesos per month is a bit hard in the Philippines, given that, minimum wage is probably four times lower than that. But if you look at that number, you'll realize that it's a whole lot too lower than most of us think when you think that this is the kind of money that you need to retire. Because a lot of people will come to me and say, I want to retire, but I don't have millions. I'm not making, a crazy amount of money. I'm not making 500,000, 1 million a month. And so that's the mentality that we have. And so the time that I was thinking about retirement, roughly this was the income that we were at. We were at about 90,000 pesos per month. And I was convinced that even with this income, I can't start preparing for retirement. But then when I did the math, I learned how to compute just like I showed you, and I crunched the numbers. I realized that if I invest 9,000 pesos per month, then that will allow me to build a portfolio of eight figures before I reach the age of 60. And in fact, we're way, way closer than we thought we would be. It's only been 5 years and we're already 70% of that target. And I was like, wow, it's actually very doable. And so my point in saying here is this, right? That it's so easy for us to go and say it's impossible for us to retire by the age of 60 without first doing the math. And so if you're here and you're saying you want to retire, and now after seeing these numbers, you realize that it is doable, then I've done my job. It might be hard, but it's not impossible. If you're an OFW, if you're a work from home freelancer, if you're a business owner, if you're a high ranking employee, or probably, an employee with a side hustle, 90,000 pesos per month could be possible, right? And probably some will say, well, you know what? You're not factoring in other expenses. So shoot for more income than that, right? If you could do 100,000, 120,000. But the point is saying is this, right? That if you invest a good portion of that, then there's a very high chance that you can actually build wealth over a period of time. That it is possible to retire before 60 years old. Or let's just say, for example, you want to retire at 60 or 65 years old. It's still very doable. It's not impossible. And so there are different ways that you can do that, but you can definitely achieve it. You can achieve financial independence where now your passive income will cover your expenses. And so this is what I want everyone to understand, that this is a really good goal. This is a goal that more Filipinos should shoot for. Financial independence is not financial freedom. It's not financial stability. They're completely different things. Financial independence is getting to a point where work becomes optional for you. Now, I want to make this also clear, as I also want to make this very clear. Some final thoughts here. Financial independence does not mean that you're going to stop working. So if you go back to Patrick Mabilog 5 years ago, you ask the Patrick Mabilog if he's going to stop working, and then you ask the same Patrick Mabilog right now if he's going to stop working. My answer will probably be the same. I'm still not going to stop working because I do love what I do. But the fact of the matter is this: even if I had to, even if I one day I woke up and I said I don't want to do marketing anymore. I don't want to do content. I don't want to run a business anymore. There would be a time and a place where I can do that. Or if anything bad happens to me, like, knock on wood, right? If I lose my sight, or if I get into an accident or get sick, I won't be a financial burden to my kids because even when I'm not working, income still keeps coming in. So my point in saying all of this is simply this, right? That Filipinos can retire before 60 years old. It's not impossible. It's not a pipe dream. You can make it happen, but it will take knowing your numbers, putting in the work, building your active income to a point that you can invest a portion of that for a very long time. And there will be a point in the future where you can make work optional and you won't have to be a burden to your kids. You won't have to be a burden to your family members. You can be independent. And so hopefully this video has informed you, inspired you, shown you what's possible, because if we can only do that, so many more Filipinos will be able to build a financial future that actually looks a bit brighter. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time around. Bye.